History 1. When I turned 18, I left home and headed to college 2 hours away, moving into the dorms on campus. These dorms were managed by a private company, not the school, which led to numerous safety issues, including assaults, overdoses, and shootings right outside. As a petite female weighing around 100 pounds, I was always on high alert for potential dangers. Initially, things were okay despite having some troublesome roommates, and I mostly kept to myself. One morning in early September, as I was leaving for class, I found a condom taped to my name tag on the door with a note saying, "Call me XOXO," followed by a random phone number. I reported it to the resident assistants, RAs, but nothing came of it. I dismissed it as a silly prank by one of the guys on my floor. My roommates and I soon had issues, mainly because my night terrors disturbed them, even though I had warned them beforehand. This led to me being moved to a 2-bedroom dorm with my new roommate, Lily. We each had our own room, which seemed like a better arrangement. After a week of living there, I noticed odd things appearing in the living room overnight. When I asked Lily, she firmly denied any involvement. One day we discovered that the front door lock didn't secure properly. If you pulled the lock and twisted the handle simultaneously, the door would open. Around this time I started receiving inappropriate Snapchat messages, vague threats, and propositions for sex. The messages often referenced specific articles of clothing I wore that day, which was unsettling. I reported the lock issue, but it took 4 months, 8 complaints, a legal threat, and my friend Samantha's intervention to get it fixed. Despite the door being fixed, I continued to find presents outside my door with notes for me, and the Snapchats persisted. I eventually moved out of the dorms into an apartment with my then-boyfriend. However, the harassment continued with phone calls at work. I worked in the Dean v. DJ TM's office, answering phones, and received 3 or more calls daily from randomly generated numbers, using apps like Viber and Skype. After reporting it to the police, they investigated but found nothing. The calls were characterized by heavy breathing before hanging up. Initially, I thought it was a childish prank until one of my co-workers received a call asking for me specifically. When the call was forwarded to me, I received the same heavy breathing before the line went dead. Reporting this to my boss yielded no results, but one of the deans overheard and escalated it to Title IX. Talking to Title IX proved to be a mistake as the threats escalated. In December, while dog-sitting 2 dogs who disliked other dogs, I encountered a terrifying situation. It was around 11 p.m., and as I took the dogs out, they started growling and barking at something in the thick trees nearby. Out of the trees emerged a tall man wearing a Michael Myers-like mask, rushing toward me. The dogs positioned themselves between us, and he stopped. I ran back to the apartment as he disappeared into the trees. Foolishly, I didn't call the police but saw him once more before moving to a new apartment. After moving, things quieted down for a bit. My boyfriend and I broke up, and I found myself alone in the new apartment. One morning, I woke up to find a bald spot on my head where someone had shaved my hair in the middle of the night. I discovered my hair tied in knots inside an envelope. I called the police, who found the window accessible from the ground was broken but couldn't identify the intruder. The only items missing, besides my hair, were 3 pairs of dirty underwear. I documented the bald spot and the hair for evidence. Despite the investigation yielding no results, I have since moved again. I no longer answer phones at work and keep bear spray by my bed at all times. History 2. I'm a 35-year-old woman, and this happened when I was about 26. I work full-time as a researcher at a university, which is where these unsettling encounters took place. I'm not a professor, and given my age at the time, I could have easily been mistaken for just another student roaming the campus. On pleasant days, I like to spend my lunch hour wandering around the university grounds or sitting under a shady tree on a bench, enjoying the break from my cramped lab. One sunny afternoon, I was sitting on a bench, soaking up the fresh air, when a male student walked by and asked if he could join me. Though I'm quite shy and prefer solitude, I said sure. He started with small talk, which I politely reciprocated, but I was careful not to divulge too much. He mentioned noticing which department building I frequented, which alarmed me since I had never seen him before. but I brushed it off, thinking he might have just been observant, given the nice weather and my frequent outdoor lunches. He asked if I was a student in that department, and I explained that I worked there. He introduced himself as an engineering student and then asked me out for coffee. I declined, telling him I had a boyfriend. We parted ways, and I assumed that was the end of it. About a week later, I was enjoying another lunch break outside, this time on a different bench. Suddenly, the same guy appeared and asked if he could sit next to me again. I don't recall our exact conversation, as I was anxious about having to turn him down once more. He asked me out for coffee again, and I reiterated that I had a boyfriend and couldn't go. He left, but now I was feeling uneasy. A few days later after work, I was walking to my car, which I parked about a 10-minute walk from campus to avoid the expensive university parking fees. My route took me through quiet residential streets with minimal traffic. Halfway to my car, I noticed someone walking across the street from me but keeping a few paces behind. I didn't want to turn around and stare, but I was aware of my surroundings. As I made several turns, he followed each one, still across the street but always a few steps behind. I quickened my pace, approaching a busier street before reaching my car. He matched my speed. Panic set in as I realized he was indeed following me. I started jogging and he did too, now on the same side of the street. I was almost at my car, but crossing the last busy street worried me. Miraculously, there was a gap in traffic, and I sprinted across, finally turning to yell at him to stop following me. It was him, the engineering student. He asked if he could talk to me, but I ignored him and hurried to my car, not caring if he saw which one was mine. He didn't cross the street, and I drove home, shaken and in tears. The incident left me anxious about walking to and from work, so I started walking with a coworker and even changed my parking spot for a while. Weeks passed without seeing him, and I began spending my lunches in the lab. Occasionally, I'd visit the student center for lunch. One day, while standing in line at a crowded food court, I heard someone calling out. It was him, trying to get my attention. Panicked, I yelled at him to leave me alone. His face fell as people stared, and he melted into the crowd. My heart pounded, and I was shaking. I don't even remember if I got my food. After that, I was hyper-aware of my surroundings. It's been about 9 years since then, and I still work at the university. I'm relieved to say I never saw him again. I remain vigilant, especially when walking alone, but I'm grateful he never reappeared. I didn't know his name, so I couldn't report him, but I hope he never harassed anyone else. History 3. I was born and raised in Texas, but moved to New York when I turned 21. When I found out that a week-long trip would include a couple of overnights in Austin, I was thrilled to return to my home state for a few days. My brother lived just north of the city, and we planned to hang out and go to dinner the night I arrived. The following day, we were going to meet up with our dad, who lived about an hour away. I arrived at the hotel in downtown Austin. The crew and I checked in and then headed off to our respective rooms. After a short elevator ride, I reached my room. Not even 5 minutes later, there was a loud, hard knock on the door. It was around 1 or 2 p.m., and I hadn't yet called my dad or brother to let them know I was in town, so they wouldn't know which room I was in. Assuming it was one of my crewmates, I approached the door. Before I could reach it, a loud male voice boomed from the other side. "The front desk sent me about the bathroom problem you called in. Open the door, miss. I need in now." I froze in my tracks. I hadn't been in the bathroom yet, let alone called the front desk. I'm a petite woman, and while I don't take any crap from anyone, I still err on the side of caution. Slowly inching toward the door to look out the peephole, all I could see was that the man on the other side was at least 6 feet tall and easily over double my weight. There was no way I was going to unlock the door. I told him he must have the wrong room, but he continued pounding on the door, constantly turning the handle, insisting he needed to get in. I panicked but had the sense to grab the phone and call the front desk. The concierge confirmed they hadn't sent anyone up to my room, nor received a call about the bathroom. The entire time, the guy was still determined to get in, pounding and yelling. Fortunately, the front desk had dispatched security to my floor. When the security officers stepped off the elevator a few seconds later, I could hear them approach and ask the guy who he was, what he was doing, and tell him he needed to leave the hotel. He immediately got hostile and aggressive toward them. The front desk clerk, still on the phone with me, informed me that the police had been called and were on their way. In the meantime, I was trapped in my room, scared out of my wits. Long story short, the cops showed up quickly and arrested the guy for trespassing and criminal menacing. I later learned that he was also wanted in connection to a string of break-ins and violent assaults in Austin. He had seen and stalked me from the moment I entered the hotel lobby. Apparently, I was exactly his type of victim. Nothing else happened after that, but the incident rattled me for the rest of my stay in that hotel. The whole experience left me shaken, but I was grateful for the quick response of the hotel staff and the police.